Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion. This is a video that will take place in 3 separate playlists here on the channel. Number 1, obviously the poetry discussion list. Number 2, the National Poetry Month 2021 playlist. I will have a poetry discussion every day of the month, April 2021, because April is National Poetry Month. Hopefully this becomes a yearly thing here on the channel and I remember to do it year after year. It's one of those things I've meant to do probably for 4 years now. It was one of the very first ideas I ever had here on the channel, and I never got around to it. So that playlist, as well as a playlist of, we're going to be going poem by poem through What Matters Most is How You Walk Through the Fire. How Well You Walk Through the Fire by Charles Bukowski. This is the 3rd poem in this compilation. It's titled Igloo, and it reads as such. His name was Eddie, and he had a big white dog with a curly tail, a husky like one of those that pulled sleighs up near the North Pole. Igloo, he called him, and Eddie had a bow and arrow, and every week or two he'd send an arrow into the dog's side. Then he'd run into his mother's house through the yelping, saying that Igloo had fallen on the arrow. That dog took quite a few arrows and managed to survive. But I saw what really happened, and I'm going to start over because I already screwed everything up. There's one thing I've noticed with this collection. The wording is strange on things, which doesn't make any sense because Bukowski's collections weren't put together as collections. They were sort of poems collected during. Like this one is poems from 1970 to 1990, I think. It's a 20-year span. He didn't write all of these at the same time. Anyway, his name was Eddie, and he had a big white dog with a curly tail. A husky, like one of those that pull sleighs up near the North Pole. Igloo, he called him, and Eddie had a bow and arrow. And every week or two, he'd send an arrow into the dog's side, then run into his mother's house, through the yelping, saying that Igloo had fallen on the arrow. That dog took quite a few arrows and managed to survive. But I saw what really happened, and didn't like Eddie very much. So when I broke Eddie's leg in a sandlot football game, that was my way of getting even for Igloo. His parents threatened to sue my parents, claiming I did it on purpose because that's what Eddie told them. Well, nobody had any money anyhow, and when Eddie's father got a job in San Diego, they moved away and left the dog. We took him in. Igloo turned out to be rather dumb. Did not respond very much, had no life or joy in him, just stuck out his tongue, panted, slept most of the time when he wasn't eating, and although he wiped his ass up and down the lawn after defecating, he usually had a large fragrant smear of brown under his tail. When he was run over by an ice cream truck 3 or 4 months later and died in a stream of scarlet, I didn't feel more than the usual amount of grief and loss, and I was still glad that I had managed to break Eddie's leg. So there's a couple things going on here. The first one is the more obvious one. And I want to mention it first to get it out of the way because I think it's something that's being commented on. But the second one's where I really want to put in some work here. What's the dog's name? Igloo. What's an igloo? Igloo's a house. What's a house? A place where the family is made. So the home is where the family stays. Here we have this boy, Eddie, with a dog named Igloo. So what are we saying here when he's shooting that dog? Is this a reflection of Eddie's home life? Eddie, whose father gets a job near San Diego, and they move and leave the dog. Is this a comment that Eddie's family life has been sacrificed in order for his dad to get a job and take it. So, in this way, the father is sacrificing the family in order to get a job, much in the same way that the boy, Eddie, is sacrificing the family, the dog, Igloo, by shooting him with arrows. I think that's one commentary that's in here. And I'm going with all the stuff that's not just right on the nose. I mean, obviously, there's the stuff with the dog, abandoned love, finding love, people who are kind to animals are worth more than people who aren't. That seems to be a thread that runs throughout Bukowski. But the commentary that's giving me a little bit more trouble on how to draw a through line is that there are two jobs mentioned. There's the job that Eddie's father takes and uproots the family. By uprooting the family, that family becomes a ghost here in this poem. Maybe they move off and live happily ever after. It's possible. Who knows? But within the framework of this poem, that family's dead. Family's gone. Poof. Miraculoso. Gone. The other job is the one the dog has. Well, technically there's three. I mean, there's the ice cream truck that kills him. So maybe there's some through line with that. But the second, the big one, the person actually having it, we don't have any mention of the ice cream truck driver here. The other job mentioned is the one that the dog has, sled pulling. So if it is the dog, the type of dog that has the job, the dog is named Igloo. It becomes not the man, not Eddie's father who holds the family together, but the job. It is the job that lives through the man that holds the family together. The man, I mean, who cares, right? Men are disposable. We get that great commentary through all of literature, through all of media. Men are disposable. As long as they have a job and they can provide, they get to disappear. No one really gives a shit. This is reflected in the part of the poem after our speaker breaks Eddie's leg. Their family wanted to sue ours, but hey, nobody had any money anyway. Because you know who's not in this poem? Anywhere in this poem. Our speaker's family. We, the proverbial we, is in there. There's no mention of mom, there's no mention of dad. They don't have any money. They don't have any jobs. We can sort of infer this from assuming that this poem takes place in the larger Chinaski connected universe. Chinaski, a child during the Great Depression. Assuming this is during the Great Depression, because of the childhood mentioned. I was a child when I was a kid. We're assuming this is during the Great Depression. So no one has jobs. It's been cited that his father lost his job during the Great Depression and kept going away during the day, so the neighbors did not know he was unemployed. But we don't necessarily have to know that. I believe in everything you need to know about a piece being expressed within the piece itself. We don't get any of that here necessarily, just that there was no money. So what are we commenting on when that dog, Igloo, Turns out to be rather dumb, did not respond to much, had no life or joy in him, just stuck out his tongue, panted, slept most of the time when he wasn't eating, and although he wiped his ass up and down the lawn after defecating, he usually had a large fragrant smear of brown under his tail. What are we commenting on there? The fact that maybe it's not a job that makes life worth living, because the job can leave you dumb, can leave you not responding very much, having no life or joy in you. You just stick your tongue out and pant, sleep most of the time. And though you wipe your ass, yada, yada, yada. This also corresponds with the greater mythos of Chinaski, the greater commentary by and from Chinaski, that it is not the job that makes the life worth living. Maybe it's not even the work. Maybe it's the time you get to sit back and say, hey, no job, no work today. We're not doing any of it, baby. We're spinning it with some cats and beer. Cats and Schlitz. Cats and hams. Those are probably the Chinaski beers. But yeah, I think that what's being commented on here is the lack of correlation between job and happiness. The lack of correlation between job and worthwhileness. Being worthwhile. I think that what's being commented on here is the sharp divorce between having some place to go and collect a paycheck and being worth any real damn to any real one. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. Again, I'm nearing 100 poetry discussions here on the channel in general. But at that time, when we break 100, I will probably do at least an hour on just random poems. I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to collect some of my favorite poems, and we'll spend an hour with them. Something like that. I'm not 100% sure yet at this time. I also hope that you check out the National Poetry Month 2021 playlist here on the channel, and the playlist for What Matters Most is How Well You Walk Through the Fire by Charles Bukowski.